I do partly here at the college. Let me see. Okay. So I hope everybody can hear me. All right. Good afternoon, El Paso. Wow, right? Okay. So yeah, today's presentation is on grounding. How to ground ourselves when we're feeling a little bit out of sorts, for us to come back to the present moment. So I'm going to be sharing with you the benefits to our health and just to, get on with our lives, basically. All right. So to begin, I'm going to start talking a little bit about emotions and feelings. So psychologists, I just recently found this out, that in psychology, they actually make a difference, a distinction between emotions and feelings. And according to psychologists, emotions are more primary. And so thank you for recording this session. Yeah. So emotions are more primary and there's less of them. I used to, use the word interchangeably. I didn't know the difference. But so some of our emotions they change, obviously, but they're more fundamental. We can feel angry, afraid, sad, happy, love. Whereas emotions, rather feelings, you can have all sorts of them and they're more transitory, right? Like we can feel frustrated, overwhelmed, determined, hungry, exasperated, jealous, hurt, you name it, right? So these are the feelings that we're feeling, and the emotions are not quite there's not so many of them. So that's an interesting distinction. And it's important for us, to distinguish them, to actually, in a different, this would be a different presentation to talk about how to actually name the emotion that you're feeling, because different feelings, different emotions, if you pay attention, they feel differently in our body. And our body gives us, I'll talk about this, right? They give us information. Our body, those emotions give us information. So if you, Kirsten asked me to incorporate the family into a presentation, be as inclusive, because we're working from home with children or our parents, right? So this is a nice way to incorporate everybody. And if for yourself or for your children, you can ask yourself or your children if you notice that you're not feeling your best. This sheets, let me see. Come back here to the presentation. Okay, so these ones you can find online, a print one. And you can post it on your fridge, and then you can tell your kid, like, which way are you feeling? Point out, try to name your feeling. Already just naming the feeling. It's already like shedding light into the feeling, and the feeling does not have as much of a grip on us. And so I like Fiona the hippo. I don't know if you are familiar with her. She's a celebrity. But I like to ask my students, just take our emotional temperature today. How are you feeling today? I joke that, there's always students at the end of the semester, when all is said and done, who tell me, Miss, is there anything else I can do for my grade? And I ask them, what face do you think I make at the end of the semester when I get that question? Does anybody want to guess how I feel? Or how teachers feel? I think you can type it in your chat. Okay, but I feel like an 8. Yes, they're all coming in. Yeah, I feel like an 8. That's the face I make, and of course, deadlines coming up, I feel like a 6. Um, yeah, Mondays feel differently, right, than Fridays. And so our emotions or feelings change, and you being able to point to your feeling is important. So um, let's continue. All right, and our emotions or feelings give us information, which is really important. Like your dashboard in the car, you can think of our emotions. It's interesting too because uh, in our society, I think it's becoming more acceptable for us to talk about our feelings. But our feelings, our emotions really are there to keep safe, and to make our life. It's information, like looking at the dashboard in your car. Obviously, well, let me save that point for later. But like in my car, I get a little light that tells me if one of my doors is slightly open. Manny says I covered my check engine. Okay, yeah. If one of our doors is open, it's good to know, right, for us, because if I'm driving and then I make a turn, then the stuff that I have in mind is going to fly out, or potentially my passenger, right, if they're not strapped in. So that's good to know. I much prefer that my gauge always be on full. It's unfortunate, that it has to go down to close to empty, but that's important information for me to know. Similarly, I much rather feel happy and content. I don't particularly like to feel anxious or angry, frustrated, not good feelings for me to feel. But it's important that I do feel those emotions. It's important for all of us because if we learn how to look at our emotions and take that information, speaking of the check engine light, I don't like it when my check engine light comes on, but it's good for me to know that I need to do that, right? Because once I see it, then I can determine, just like my gas gauge, all right, do I need to stop for gas right away? Can I make it until tomorrow? Right? So similarly with anger, frustration, or anxiety, sadness. Okay, well, I don't particularly like to feel this emotion, but given this information, um, what is the source of my anger? What is the source of my anxiety? And what can I do about it? Just like putting gas, just like my gas gauge. That's the idea with our emotions. And let me continue here. Certain emotions, let's talk fear, for instance, or anger could be one, trigger our sympathetic nervous system. And so, this is physiology 101. We have both. We have the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, and they're both very important for our well-being. What we want between them is balance so that the organism is in homeostasis, as much as possible. But we want them both to be working. We don't necessarily want one to be dominant. The parasympathetic nervous system is also known as the rest and digest. This is when we're calm and everything is peachy. But then the sympathetic nervous system is very important for our survival. This is also known as the fight, flight, or freeze. And this one comes on when we need it, like emergencies. Let me see, when our body determines that we are in an emergency. So for instance, let me go back. Well, yeah, I think I can continue with this, right? So we are the descendants of people whose sympathetic nervous system worked really well. Because back in the day, right, when they saw the saber-tooth tiger, the people that were like, interesting, the philosophers, right, that were wondering about the saber-tooth tiger, those are the ones that got eaten. And even though in our society, fear gets a bad reputation, like if somebody calls you a coward, that's certainly not a compliment. But it's very important that we have the ability to feel fear, because that is, I tell my students, as is, I've already done plenty of stupid things in my life. Imagine if I didn't have the ability to be afraid, I would have gotten myself in way more trouble. So fear is what triggers, one of the things that triggers the sympathetic nervous system. And physiologically, what happens is a number of things. The digestive system, reproductive, and immune system kind of go in the back burner. One of the ways that I've heard this explained is, if you're a Trekkie, if you like Star Trek, it's like, when they're under attack or something, and the captain says, "Out two shields." And so basically, they lower the light in the bridge. And so, because it's like we're under attack, and we get a jolt of adrenaline, and we end up, running really fast away from the saber-tooth tiger. Some of us, when the flight response comes on, it's not cognitive, which is a good thing. Your body just overrides the cognitive so that you can get going to do what you need to do to survive or to save your species. And so in the upper right-hand corner, you might have seen, if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's on YouTube. This gentleman in France ended up, he saw this baby dangling from the fourth floor of a building, and he just took off and went up like Spider-Man, up four floors through the outside, climbed, grabbed the baby, pulled the baby into safety, and then I'm sure he was shaken, right? You might have experienced this, right? After the adrenaline, you get the shakes, right? Our body responds differently. Sometimes people urinate, or we poop in our pants, right? Because it's a physiological response that is not cognitive. Then some other species, like the fainting goats, when they get startled, they freeze. And this is a way, their mechanism, their organisms have developed to freeze, and they faint, they topple over. I guess that way their prey would think that they were dead, right, and not chase them. So it's interesting how we respond. But the idea here is that when our sympathetic nervous system, which allows us to survive, when it's a real threat, then yeah, we need to get going. The problem is that sometimes we are not able to determine the difference between a real threat and a perceived threat. A threat that we think is imminent really isn't. So then our sympathetic nervous system is on longer than it's necessary and longer than it's beneficial. And I compare that to maybe getting your foot stuck in the gas. What do you think? Even let's just assume that your car is parked, so you're not going actually 100 miles an hour. But what might happen to the engine? In case you want to, what might happen to the engine if your gas pedal gets stuck? What do you think would happen if the RPM goes up as high as it goes and it gets stuck there? Yeah, that's exactly what would happen, right? The engine would probably blow. And hi, Ivy. And so the same thing happens to us. Let me share this next screen with everybody. When we have chronic stress, right? A lot of anxiety, a lot of we're, not in homeostasis, basically, right? We're stressed out, especially if it's due to a perceived threat. The levels of adrenaline and cortisol and the muscle tension end up having other adverse effects in our body. We may end up developing heart disease or exacerbating asthma, obesity, Alzheimer's, diabetes, tension headaches of sorts or others, right? Depression, anxiety, IBS, trouble sleeping, accelerated aging, and premature death. This is according to WebMD. Not a good idea, right? So there's different ways for us to, and I'm going to be sharing with you a number of them today. But part of it is our inability to be in the present moment. We may feel regret or sadness, or guilt because of stuff that took place in the past, if we feel those emotions. And then in terms of anxiety, apprehension, it is because of an imagined, worst case scenario type of mental projection. So in the present moment, we really are okay. And if you're not okay, then, stop watching this video, right? You need to seek help if you really are not okay, if you have, something that is a real threat. A lot of our threats are in our head, they're perceived. We just imagine. And so, for instance, they end up stealing our joy. I don't know if the whole picture came on. Yeah, there it is. So the gentleman in the upper right-hand corner, rather. It's like he's got some heavy regret there, and then this woman, I don't know, she's upset about something, it looks like, and the guy in the main picture, he's like, the market just crashed, right? It has that stocks just went down. So what am I going to do now, right? It is this type of our joy, our inability to sometimes be in the present if it's a perceived threat. And so basically we're part of living life in a joyful and healthy way is to try to be in the present moment. And so if you or your children or someone you love, you notice that they are, if it's a child having a meltdown, or maybe, if it's a big child and they're having a meltdown too, right? You may want to share these techniques with them or try them yourself if you notice you are feeling sad or anxious, one of these heavy emotions. So let's go ahead and do them together. It's all very sensory, because connecting to our senses, it is one way to connect back to our body and be more present. So go ahead and take in a deep breath and exhale. And hopefully you are in a place where you're comfortable. And identify, we'll try this with maybe one or maybe two things that go ahead and touch something. And then just ask yourself, how does it feel? Is it smooth? Is it rough? What's the texture? And good sense of humor there, right? Is it, what temperature is it? Is it hot? Is it wet? And so that connects you, right, to your sense of touch. If you'd like, go ahead and touch something else that's not the keyboard. And again, ask yourself, how does it feel in my hand, right? Is it soft? Is it hard, hot, cold, wet, sharp? Maybe a combination of things. And go ahead and take another inhale again, one more time. And exhale. And we can do this one now. Your sense of smell. Try to sit still for a second here and see what smells you might detect in your surrounding. And how would you describe them? What do they smell like? Earlier, I was changing the water for my tortoises, and I have it's a clay pot, so the clay smelled like wet dirt. So paying attention to the sense of smell. Does it smell flowery or citrusy? Does it smell like food? Is it a faint smell? You can ask yourself these questions, and if you have children, you can run through these activities with them and ask them to describe. Does this smell make you hungry? Right? Is it a good smell, bad smell? Go into details. The next one is our sense of sight. Same thing. If you have kids, you can look at bugs and or not, but I'm assuming here, like if you have a child or you yourself, try to look at something that you identify. What color is it? Does it have a pattern? Does it have texture? What is the texture? What is the pattern? Does it have depth? Is it iridescent? So different shades of variations of the color maybe. And then try again with something else. This one's real nice to do in nature, especially right now that the colors of our foliage is changing. To take kids with you and go outside and just take a look at how the sun glistens on the leaves, right? And shines off the leaves sometimes. And the shadows that it has. And then the variations of the colors. So different types of green, different types of yellow. So this one you can have more fun with and make it more interactive with your children so that they can start naming the different colors and the different shades within the same color that they notice. Another sense, you don't need to do all of them at once, but you can try them. This one is another fun one. So let's go ahead. Of course, you'll hear my voice, but let's take in a deep breath and exhale. And besides my voice, I'm going to be quiet here for a second. Try to identify the sounds in your environment. And what are those sounds? I can hear my dog snoring and my turtles digging and my partner talking over there in the other room. Maybe some of those sounds are always there, like the fridge humming. And I live close to I-10, so I always hear I-10 noise, the main artery, I call it. It's the main artery. And this one, I recommend that you can have more fun with it for yourself or for your children if you want to go ahead and put your, like with a train, you not only sound is so cool because sound, not only do you hear with your ears, you can feel the vibrations, right? If you get close to the tracks of a train, you can feel the sound. There's dancers who are deaf who dance because of the vibration of the music. They're in touch with the vibration, and that's how they can feel the rhythm. And I'm talking right now, right? So I'm giving this talk, and so I can feel my own heartbeat. I can listen to it, but you're probably more relaxed than I am. So if you want to go ahead and put your hand on your heart, and you can ask yourself, what sound does what type of sounds does my body make? Our bodies make different sounds, right? Can you hear yourself breathing? I can hear myself breathing, and I can hear my own heartbeat. So, and then, our stomach, right, makes all sorts of sounds. And so, yeah, so if you can go outside, you can go inside of yourself, right, for the sound one. It's a cool one. And then there is taste. That's another one that's really nice to ground ourselves in, right? So what do you taste? Even if it's just one thing. I have the taste of coffee in my mouth. I've been drinking coffee. So does it taste fresh, bitter, creamy, citrusy? Is it sweet, savory, right? What is the taste in your mouth? That's another physiological response. When we're stressed out, we tend to get the dry mouth, or saliva, for whatever reason, right, stops going to our mouth. And so you can try what I suggest that you do. If you want to try this grounding activities is like earlier, I ask you to take your emotional temperature, right? Maybe like if you're feeling anxiety, you can ask yourself, okay, so I notice I'm anxious. In a scale from 1 to 10, what's my level of anxiety right now? And then you can say, it's like a 9. And do the grounding activities. One of them do, and then take your emotional temperature again. How do you feel right now? Do you feel, in a scale from 1 to 10, how anxious are you feeling? Right? And the idea is that hopefully you notice a decrease in that number, as you take your emotional temperature, because the idea is to come back to the present. So our senses really help us to do that. And to realize that all things considered, even though we do have a lot of, we're very preoccupied, right, about our deadlines or our health or the health of a loved one, what is going to happen with our health these days, right? What is going to happen with our employment or lack of it? There's a lot of things that we as the world, right, as a human species are dealing with these days. But if you're here watching the show, right, and we're okay. We're breathing, and as long as we're breathing, everything is possible, right? So once we're grounded, once we've come back to the present moment and we've been able to differentiate that we're not in imminent danger, ask yourself, okay, well, you know what? I'm anxious. I'm just picking anxiety because it's such an emotion that it seems like a lot of us are experiencing this day. So, or, angry at, you name it. Well, what is this emotion telling me? because it's important, right? Those emotions are there to give us information. So if it is anger, maybe you feel angry because of something that you consider it's not acceptable, nor anxious about, you're preoccupied about something that could potentially happen in the future. So ask yourself, what is the source? What is the source, and what is this emotion telling me? And then, is ask yourself if you're feeling this emotion because of an imminent threat to your well-being, or if it's more of a perceived threat. You are afraid that something might potentially happen, but hasn't happened yet, right? So if it hasn't happened yet, then in the present moment, there's no telling. It may not come to pass, and then there's no, all your worry was for nothing. So then the other things is reach out. Reach out to family, reach out to friends, to a counselor, someone you trust that you can talk with, ask for guidance, and then address your emotions. So the practice of mindfulness and these activities are not just so that we feel better, and it's all rainbows and butterflies, but so that we have the presence of mind to actually respond in an intelligent way to our problem, right? And solve it in the most beneficial way for ourselves and for those around us. So go ahead and be proactive. But once you've slept on it, kind of thing, right? Once you've calmed down enough to consider what is going to be the best way forward. So yeah, I'd like to open it up for questions. Thank you very much for you coming here. And I wanted to tell you about our Mindfulness Club. This is what we do. We just, practice mindfulness with each other. We share resources and encourage each other to keep it together, because if you're able to stay grounded, you make it so much easier for those around you to also, so it's not good for it's not just good for us, it's good for those around us. So yeah, no pun intended, but this is it. Any questions, comments? You're welcome. Any questions? What do you think?
Thank you. Ms. Diaz, can you send us the link that you just showed in the previous slide?
Yeah, you know what? Ms. Kirsten is actually recording. This is being recorded. So yeah, she's gonna send it to me, but then here's my email. Oh, here, let me put it in here. And that's my email. And if you email me, I can also send it to you.
I will.
All of our recordings are also going to be on the Blackboard page under institution at the top. So this one also the whole recording will actually be on the Blackboard institution page too. So that would be another way you can get it, as well as emailing her.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez.
Sure.
Other questions or suggestions?
Well, thank you so much. This has been great. I mean, this is some great techniques that we can try using with all these things going on right now. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Dr. Diaz. This is great. And I invite you all to attend her Mindfulness Club. She does have all that information there. And again, it'll be posted. And then there's her email, KD is 60.
I changed it. Sorry.
at edu. So y'all can get in touch also and find out more about this. And I do agree, you do have a very soothing voice. So thank you so much. This is a great way to begin our weekend, and that we could practice some of these techniques. So thank you again for presenting, and thank you guys for coming to the presentation. I did post a link for the Tejano Passport Program if y'all are interested in getting some points for a medallion for attending all these great events. So if you have any questions, you can ask right now. We have a little time, or you can email her. And then in addition, next week, we're going to also have a workshop on how to use the virtual setting to play games. It says virtual gaming, but it's not the kind of gaming I don't think that you're thinking of. But there's all sorts of great board games and things that you can play online. So that'll be Mr. Wade Cornelius from Northwest Campus. He'll be presenting that next week at 1 on Friday. So if there's not any other questions, I thank you guys all for coming and hope you all have a nice weekend and you and your family stay safe. So thank you all.
Stay safe. Thank you.